I had been a criminal lawyer for my entire career, and I want to tell you about a case that I had. It was a murder case. I've done both defense and prosecution. This was a defense case. The murderer, I'll call him John Doe, committed a terrible crime, namely murder, and he did this by attaching some clips, bigger than alligator clips, smaller than what you would use to jump a car, to his wife's nipples. And the other end he put into a power strip and then fed the power in over a period of time, and it killed her. But it didn't kill her right away. She lived long enough for him to call 911 and say that this woman had been electrocuted. She died on the way to the hospital. He was eventually, well, at first he was charged with involuntary manslaughter because his story to the police was that this was a case of consensual, wild, kinky sex that just went awry. Later, when a person heard that, he went to the police and said, I saw her 6 weeks before the homicide and she had bruises, and I told him, said John Doe, you'd better not be doing anything to her because she will leave you. And he said, I will kill her. I will tell the police it was wild, kinky sex that left the rails. I am too smart and they will never catch me. And so with that, of course, the police changed the charge from involuntary manslaughter to murder. It turns out in Pennsylvania, you can be convicted of murder even if you didn't intend it. You're convicted of a lower grade of murder. And in fact, because he had done virtually identically the same thing to another woman some years before, and that woman was put on the stand, and I watched 3 jurors crying as she told her tale about how he had hooked up electrical leads to her nipples, but she lived to tell about it. It was because of that that this murderer was convicted of 3rd-degree murder and not first. Because you can be convicted of murder even if you don't intend it, as long as you do something that shows a reckless disregard for the value of human life. And obviously, electrocuting somebody shows a reckless disregard for the value of human life. Shortly, 6 months after the arrest, I got a phone call from a lawyer in Harrisburg. The victim's mother wanted to meet my client in person, asked me if I could arrange that, and I did. And I was at the York County Prison as he shuffled in with his leg irons on and his hands cuffed, and there was a guard and a policeman and that lawyer and me and the victim's mother. And she held out her hands to his and she said, John, I want you to know I have no control over what will happen in this case, but I forgive you. I have handled between 20 and 25 murder cases in my career, which is now at an end. I have never seen anybody do that. I don't think I ever could, and I doubt that anybody here would be able to do that either, but I saw it happen. While the jury was out, by the way, my client chose wisely not to testify that this was some wild, kinky sex. While the jury was out, the lawyer for the mother came over to me and said she'd like to talk to you. And so I talked to her for a minute, and she said, well, why do you think a person does this? And I couldn't answer that. And I said, there's something I want to tell you. I have never, and by this time I had been trying cases for 30 years, I had never seen anybody do what you did. And I have to acknowledge that as an absolutely unbelievable act of kindness. It's something that we should all be able to follow, but I doubt that very many of us can. And she said, I want to thank you for not putting on the case that he told the police, this stuff about wild, kinky sex that left the rails. And I said, well, to be honest, If I had thought that it would have advanced my client's interest, I would have done that. But I didn't, and so I didn't. And I have to say that I've never seen anybody do what you did. And she said, well, to be honest, I thought of something I've heard in many different religions by many different people. And so I'll just quote Nelson Mandela, because he said roughly the same thing. If you carry revenge in your heart, if you carry hate in your heart, it's the same as drinking poison and hoping that it kills your enemy.